Your ears do not deceive you. You have just entered the Cryptid Creator Corner brought to you by your friends at Comic Book Yeti. So without further ado, let's get on to the interview.
Hey, comics fam! Does a realm-trotting dystopian fantasy adventure that cleverly explores Norse mythology sound up your alley? It sure does mine. So I was excited to see one of my favorite comic creators, Eisner and Harvey Award-winning Michael Avon Oeming, is launching a new Kickstarter project collecting issues 1 through 5 of his creator-owned series After the Realm in July. I just got a chance to get an early peek, and it's fantastic. With over 300 pages of material, including 22 new pages of story, it follows a young, rebellious ranger named Una Lightfoot trying to find her best friend. As the tale of friendship and destiny unfolds, the 9 realms are torn asunder, with Loki up to his usual troublemaking self, of course. It should come as no surprise at this point that the cast of unusual characters Michael created in the book includes some anthropomorphic animals. But I can't say I've ever seen them riding roughshod across the land in mini tanks a la Mad Max Fury Road before, so I'm so here for it. Quirky, slightly beautifully unhinged, and completely engrossing, the immediate analogs to me were The Legend of Zelda meets The Mighty Thor with Norse underpinnings for perspective. Michael is handling both the writing and the artwork duties, with Taki Soma on colors and Sean Lee lettering the project. Head on over to Kickstarter and make sure you back this, cause it's epic. Y'all, Jimmy, the Chaos Goblin, strikes again. I should have known better than to mention I was working on my DC Universe meets Ravenloft hybrid D&D campaign on social media. My bad. He goes and tags a bunch of comics creators we know, and now I have to get it in gear and whip this campaign into shape so we can start playing. Another friend chimes in, "Are you going to make maps?" It's fair to say it's been a while since I put something together, so I guess? It was then that I discovered Arkenforge. If you don't know who Arkenforge is, they have everything you need to make your TTRPG more fun and immersive, allowing you to build, play, and export animated maps, including in-person fog of war capability that lets your players interact with maps as the adventure unfolds while you, the DM, get the full picture. Now I'm set to easily build high-res animated maps, saving myself precious time and significantly adding nuance to our campaign. That's a win every day in my book. Check them out at arkenforge.com and use the discount code YETI5 to get $5 off. I'll drop a link in the show notes for you, and big thanks to Arkenforge for partnering with our show. I think I'm going to make Jimmy play a Goblin Warlock just to get even.
Hello, and welcome to Comic Book Yeti's Cryptid Creator Corner. I am one of your hosts, Jimmy Gasparo, and what an episode I have for you today. I mean, I feel like I've been unbelievably lucky the past couple of episodes with some of the guests I've had, and today is no exception. I have a writer and artist of Mad Cave's upcoming Flash Gordon comic that is going to be out, I believe, in July. We're going to talk about that, but please welcome to the podcast writer Jeremy Adams and artist Will Conrad. Jeremy, Will, how are you doing today?
Go ahead, Will. How are you doing?
I'm awesome, especially now talking to you guys. This is great.
Yeah, I'm great. Shoot, we were just talking. My oldest daughter's birthday's today, and you have 2 daughters the same age. I know. I'm like, yeah. I have 2 daughters. Will, do you have kids?
Not kids anymore, my friend.
Oh man,
2 daughters. But they are.
See, you're ahead of us. You're ahead of us. I can see that teenageness coming toward me like a rocket ship. Terrifying.
Be ready, my friend. Be ready.
Yeah.
2 girls.
Yep, I have 2 daughters. Jeremy and I were just talking. Our daughters are very, very. We're on the same path in terms of the ages of our kids.
Yeah.
My oldest daughter is turning 20 this year.
Oh man.
And my youngest is turning 18. So
you were like 10 when you had them.
Huh?
You were like 10 when you had them. You were just a little baby. Look how good you look. Come on, you can't have a 20-year-old.
Yeah, I do.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's exciting. 20 and 18, but I am like Jeremy. I'm a little apprehensive, let's say.
It's the best thing in the world.
Yeah.
For me, it was one of the joys that I have is seeing and the kind of women they are becoming. It's amazing.
That's great.
That's awesome. Well, from there, turning to what we're here to talk about tonight, and I mean, I'm sure we'll get into a couple other things, but so Flash Gordon, um, this is coming out through Mad Cave.
Yeah.
I believe issue number 1 is going to be out. I want to say July 26th.
Yeah.
Or July 24th.
Something like that.
That would be the Wednesday. So it's coming out from Mad Cave. There was an issue 0 that dropped for Free Comic Book Day. I got to read it. Fantastic first issue. It really felt like new and fresh, but kind of captured some of the, the touchstones of Flash Gordon. I guess I'd mentioned this before we started recording, and I'm always curious when a writer and artist, any creator really, comes on board for something that has such a long history. Because to me, that seems like a very daunting, challenge. Like whenever, there's like an engagement post on like Twitter, and it's like, what character did you always want to write? And somebody will say something like Batman or The Flash or Green Lantern, which I know you've done. And I'm just like, I don't even know where I would begin. So now you have a Flash Gordon, originally, like a comic in the a comic strip, 1934, Alex Raymond. It was kind of first created to kind of compete with Buck Rogers.
Yeah.
And it's taken on many different iterations over the years, whether or not it's been in comics or a film or television series, animated series. So I guess when this opportunity first comes along, how do you kind of prepare yourself to, like, where am I going to begin with, doing the back work for Flash Gordon?
I can just speak for myself. Like I had been pitching creator-owned books at Mad Cave, which they were like, no, but no, just kidding. So I was pitching to Mike Martz, and he said he had some licensed material, and he kind of rattled off. And when he said Flash Gordon, I was like, oh, I'll do Flash Gordon. And he was like, great. Okay, really? I was like, yeah. And so I didn't know what I wanted to do at first. I mean, obviously none of us do, but then I just started thinking about it. I really like pulp sci-fi. I really like stuff like Edgar Rice Burroughs' John Carter of Mars series. And what I like about it is there's a lot of imagination packed into a good adventure. It's much more adventure driven, if that makes sense. It's not like a deconstructionist point of view. That's not how I write. I just like to have fun and write really, strong adventure stories. And then when we were talking about artists, Will was on a list. They came to me with somebody, and I was like, they're fine, but like I would rather have somebody like Will. And I had Will and one other person, and thank goodness Will said yes, because they were like, oh, well, his is very superhero. I'm like, well, this is a superhero, And I was really excited, and I felt like, I don't know, Will, I feel like we haven't really talked about it, but I feel like you had more of the uphill battle, because when you're dealing with an IP that is owned by somebody like King Features, there are a lot of obligations and rules, and hey, it can't look like this anymore, and it can look like this, and we can't own this. We don't own this look from the movie, so you have to do something different. I just have to write about a square-jawed hero that saves the day, so that to me is pretty easy. Will has to make Aura not too sexy. That was one of the notes. I was like, that's her job.
Yeah. So what was that experience like, Will? Because you now have to take things you can use, things you can't. I'm sure you wanted it to look recognizable, but have that fit within, your style.
Well, for me, it was kind of the same. Mike Mars came to me. He wanted me to do some stuff for Mad Cave. Like it happened with Jeremy. He offered me other possibilities, and when he said Flash Gordon, I didn't hear anything else. I said, okay, Flash Gordon, that's it. And especially when he said that I would be working with Jeremy, somebody who I already worked in the past, and I loved work with him. I think we have a good chemistry here. I said, "Oh man, that's gonna be fantastic." And I was fortunate enough that Jeremy came to me and said, "Hey man, what do you want to draw?" I said,
and that's like the open door policy.
Oh my God, man! Don't do that. Don't go there.
It's true. It's true because in my mind, it's like, I don't know. I mean, the worst thing would be, I said this once to Kevin McGuire, and this is what I said. I said, I would hate to be an artist, and all I did was just draw people talking. And Kevin goes, "That's all I want to do." I was like, oh no, I judged that incorrectly. But I would rather I'd rather talk to somebody like Will and be like, what is it you want to do? And then how can we incorporate that into the story? What can we do that would be really, really cool in that vein? And I always have it in the back of my head because, like I said, I'm telling adventure stories and I just want it to be fun. I want it to be fun for him. So it's like, you can tell sometimes when an artist is like, I hate this.
Yeah.
But Will doesn't do that. Thank goodness. I mean, the cool thing about the issue 0 was it's pretty bombastic. It throws you into a story in progress. I'm not trying to do an origin story of any type in a way. But it was, that story was born. I already written issue 1 and they said, hey, you have to do an issue 0. You have to do like a free comic book.
It was amazing. But as you were saying, the uphill battle is not actually an uphill battle. It's I have actually more than one style. I have that style that I do for superheroes, and obviously I'm doing something like a superhero, a Flashborn, because it's an adventure. But I'm also doing some, a little more contained stuff. Yeah. The main difficulty here was, as you said, I always wanted to be loyal, faithful to the original characters. Obviously, we have the 80s movie, with the Queen, the greatest
soundtrack ever.
Soundtrack ever. So, but the characters are a little bit different, and I like that. But I came to that to the 30s and look into that, and I want to be not as far away from that as possible. But obviously, because of the time that we live nowadays, the demands, they said a lot of stuff. For example, the Ming, he the character, he has that kind of a Fu Manchu look.
Yeah.
They said, no, we don't want that. We don't want that because we don't want to stay away from ethnic problems. And I said, okay, so he is an alien, so let's do him an alien. So I can keep some of the facial features, but add enough stuff to show that he's not from any race in the world. He's an alien. And so that's what I did, and I did that trying to, as I said, try to keep being faithful to the original character. The personality, the facial expressions, and I always try to imagine how he is going to react and to act and react, and try to make him as loyal as possible to the original characters, and that goes for every other character. So I had to design all of the characters, and I decided to go. I mean, they are various alien races, so I try to convey that, giving them different features. Everything is different, and the most difficult was, like you are talking about, our aura. I mean, in the comic books, the original series and everything else, she is a really, really sensual character.
Yeah.
So I had to try to incorporate that, but at the same time, I can't make her too sexy. I can't show a lot of skin and stuff like that. That's the most difficult. But we do what we have to do.
Yeah, but you know what? Still looking sexy, Will. Still looking sexy. That's all I'm saying.
That was the goal.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say for the free comic book day that issue, I love the look of Ming. Because I wasn't sure what changes there would be. I mean, I'm familiar with the 1980 movie and some of the old comic strips, like a little bit, but I don't have like a vast knowledge of Flash Gordon. I think it can be a fun character as like I get the point of the adventure serial. But I was curious as to how everyone was going to look and like how would the world feel. But I want to say when that issue with Ming, Ming looks great, and it's always fun. I think when you do have an alien character and an artist, like you will, can really bring out so much emotion, and like acting in the face with an alien face, and I think that was great with Ming's character in that Zero issue.
Yeah, you had to
really
thread a needle. You had to thread a needle because, as we know, comic book fans are the most tolerant of change.
Very tolerant.
I kid. But that's the task, right? Is to bring in fans of a kind of bygone era into a book and do it in a way that like somebody that's an old fan will recognize and enjoy it. But also it's even with some of the changes, even with the art changes and stuff, I don't think we stray that far from who they are as characters. Ming's still merciless, it's like,
yeah, sure.
And that's a huge component of it, because I know as a writer, that's not what I do. Is I figure these characters exist for so long because there's something about them that people like, and whatever that thing is, I don't want to change that, because that's what's going to get, that's what's going to propel them into another 100 years in media.
Yeah. But Jeremy, when you're like when they come to you and it's Flash Gordon, and you don't know what it is exactly you're doing yet, well, like what is the process to make sure that like, oh, I have this great idea? When you have like 80 years of history, what do you have to do to make sure that you're not doing anything too similar to what's been done before? Like, is that is that a you job? Is that editorial?
It's a both and. I mean, I just let my mind wander and like, hey, what if I did this, and what if I did this, and then they'll come back. I'll give you an example. I said something about like I think it was Ming's son, and I put that my original pitch, and they're like, yeah, we already did that. It already happened. They already did a thing with Ming, and I was like, oh, I didn't know. That was just a run I didn't know. So that was great, but there's also things like they were like really hesitant about me using the word Mogo. So I was like, okay, cool. So we're going to blow up Mogo, and we're going to move from there. And because I don't want to have to sit there and try to think about not using a word. But it sparked a really cool idea. And then that, like, I often go with in my brain with really fun ideas. Like, what's the next thing that'd be cool? I just push play in my head a lot of times and just see what kind of adventures come out. But it's a both and. It's really hard with characters, because it's the same thing when I do the Flash in DC or Green Lantern. There's huge mythologies with huge holes and pitfalls that I try to avoid. And I'm sitting there on, looking up the map of Mogo. I'm looking up the different alien races and trying to figure out, wait, what's their character? I've got like all these old books that I'm like flipping through and trying to get ideas. And usually what I do is I kind of have a very macro point of view about the plot. Like, we're going from point A to point B. And in between there, I just start throwing ideas out. And then I'll ask somebody like Will, and he'll be like, I want to see this. I'm like, great. That is something we can put in, Yeah,
the end of that zero issue is phenomenal. But like, I love how the tension in it builds. I love the whole plot device for like, for Flash to get into the base. Everything about it really, really worked to like amp everything up. And I thought that ending was really unexpected. And Will, that device going off and what happens to the planet, I mean, it looks phenomenal.
More than that, when I wrote the thing about Flash like swinging around with the sword, I literally was like, I hope he can draw that. Like I was like, I don't really know how to describe it that well. And then it was like, oh, thank goodness, it looks great. It looks great.
Yeah, and for me, the last page was the best one. I mean, the funniest one to draw. And is it a spoiler if I say what's in the last page?
It's been out. I mean,
I don't think it's a spoiler for the 0 issue, the free comic book day issue, because that's been out.
Yeah, in that page, the last panel, the panel where where Mogo is, being destroyed. If you look at the direction of the explosion, there is a flash symbol there.
By the way, we keep calling it Mogo, and that's the planet in Green Lantern. It's
Green
Mongo.
Lantern.
Yeah. I said that too. I was like, yeah, Mogo. I'm like, I mean, Mongo. That's what happens when you write 2 books. You put the flat. That's amazing. That's great.
That's pretty awesome.
All right, let's take a quick break. Hey, comics fam. Indie comic book publisher Band of Bars just got a level up and announced it is now a cooperative. This heralds a new era for them, including a partnership with Dauntless Stories. And they added several new members to the ownership group. Marcus Jimenez is now Chief Operating Officer, Brent Fisher takes on the role of Chief Diversity Officer, and Joey Galvez is introduced as Head of Kickstarter Ops and Social Media Manager, which is sure to increase their capabilities overall as a publisher. And it further promotes their mission statement of advancing representation, inclusion, and diversity in the medium. They also established a new board of directors to help chart the new path of their journey. With new projects in the works like Alas Goodbye dropping in June, Unbroken soon launching on Kickstarter, and Pawn coming up with Dauntless, stay tuned to this space for more exciting news from the growing Bards family. Let's get back to the show.
You mentioned the 2 of you working together before, and I want to. I know that you worked together on the Flash, so we're going from the Flash to Flash Gordon, but it was like issues.
I look forward to
listeners.
The Flash Thompson series someday from Marvel.
Yeah, people say, you're drawing Flash now. No, you said Flash Gordon.
So for listeners, I think it was Flash 772 and 773.
Yeah,
that you worked together on before. Was that the first time that you would work together on the Flash?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because I that was my first run of comic books I had done ever. I'm fairly new to comic books, so I mean, in terms of writing, not reading. Sure. I think that happened in utero. But yeah, I think that's the first time we worked together. And when you get to work with somebody as talented as Will, I always say that artists are magicians. I mean, the reality of comic books is that they are expressly I shouldn't express it, but they're a visual medium. And I know in my own life as a comic book reader, if I open up a book and it does not look good, I put it down. It's that quick. It doesn't matter if it's the best story ever written. I do not care. So right. Growing up, it's like, if it doesn't look good, then I don't want anything to do with it. And one of the reasons I, even mentioned Will was because I like his art. And to be a professional artist at his level is such a it's such a rarity. It's not many people are doing it with such consistency and talent. And I'm trying to do my own creator own and looking for an artist that I'm like, man, I want it to look good. And you begin to realize how few and far between these unicorns are that do this thing, because I can't draw a stick figure, so when I see somebody do something like he does, I'm just like, I'm flummoxed. I have no idea how you would be able to do that.
And especially with those, just to get back to the briefly talk about the Flash issues 7072 and 773. I think that's the Heat issue.
Yeah,
somebody just posted something on Twitter about looking for an artist that does flames really well. And I was like, man, I really hope somebody mentioned Will, because those flames and those heat wave issues are spectacular. And that's not, I don't draw either, but I would assume that is not an easy thing to do to make it look so realistic. But I thought those issues were great. So
well, we have to keep learning every time. So when I need, I look for reference. I mean, to see how things work. But to me, that's not even the most difficult stuff to do. And
what's the most difficult? I need to know this.
Yeah. What is it?
Well, believe it or not, for me, the most difficult scenes are the quieter ones.
Shut up.
Yeah, yes, I will explain why. It's easy to take. I mean, I'm not saying that it's easy to draw. That's not the point. It's easy to get a script full of action, explosions and superheroes doing, amazing stuff, because it's not that hard to make it look good.
Yeah.
If the artist is professional, if he has a good creativity, and he, if he knows his trade, he can work with that, without thinking too much. But when you take a quieter scene, like where the characters have to express emotions, and you have to build a setting, for example, you have to create any mood, or drama, or sadness, or a contained anger, or stuff like that. You have to work with facial expressions. You have to work with light and shadow to give that effect. You have to know how to move the camera around to convey if he's alone, if everything. There's a lot of stuff that has to happen, and you have to do it very, very well, because it's only that. You don't have distractions to your eyes. If I don't do in an action scene, if I don't do a character that well, he is only one part of a big scene. Right. But if I do, quieter scene, that like two people talking, and I have to give to the reader that expression, sometimes it doesn't even have a dialogue. So I have to know how to show that to the reader, and that to me is the most difficult. And for me, it's the most gratifying stories that I do, is those when I have to take that task, and I know that I did it well. I am very happy with that.
Well, I mean, listen, I get complimented all the time for those particular issues of The Flash, because there is this dramatic moment where Heatwave and Wally talk to each other about, he has cancer and he's crying, and they're like, and people just go bananas. So the fact you say that's difficult, it's amazing to me, because it looks so effortless on the page. It's really, really drove it home.
Yeah, yeah. And I as I said, I actually, editors look me up a lot to those kind of issues.
Yeah,
actually,
I see that.
That makes sense.
Because again, not many people can do that. Not many people can do that.
Will, and you said when they first mentioned Flash Gordon to you, you didn't hear anything else, and so what was your experience with that?
Sorry?
No, I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, especially when they told me that Jeremy would be writing it.
That's what I like to hear. No, that's too kind.
I was
look, man, that's serious.
That's really kind.
That's awesome. But what else what was your experience though with like Flash Gordon up until that point? Like, were you familiar with like the movie and the Queen soundtrack? Were you familiar with like, were you a fan of the original comic strip?
Yes, I had obviously not all, but I have seen some of the 30s comic book stuff. I love the work that Alex did. I also saw the 30s movie.
Yeah,
that was in black and white. That I liked. I love that movie. I don't. Actually, there were two movies. I saw both of them, and they were great. And I obviously I saw the 80s movie, and so those were the experience. But it was so ingrained in my mind that when they said Flash Gordon, Flash,
yeah, totally,
it came into my head. Said, no, I have to do Flash.
Yeah.
That's
It's the
awesome.
same.
The funny thing is, me and Jeremy, we were talking in another situation with the Mad Cave people, and I said, okay, so let's talk about the music. I said, no, you can't keep talking about the music because we
Right.
want to move away
Yeah.
from the 80s movie. I said, oh.
I know. I try to put a character from the movie too, because I was like, this guy's cool. They're like, nope. And I'm like, yeah, you know. But again, sometimes when you get those constraints, they can lead to some really fun
Yeah, agree.
extra things that you get to do, you know. And it's cool because Will and I are doing our own version of Flash Gordon. And you know, there's a comic strip that's going on right now that has nothing to do with us. And Mad Cave has, you know, a younger version of Flash Gordon. So they're really, ours is more of the straightforward comic book, you know, flat like flagship thing, and we're having a lot of fun, and I have a lot of bananas ideas that I can't wait to force Will to draw, and it's going to be fantastic.
Well, I'm looking forward to it because where that free comic book day issue ended, like I said, it was phenomenal. I can't wait to see, where it goes from there. I mean, I really like some of the other stuff Mad Cave is doing. They have
Yeah,
Dick Tracy out now and Flash
yeah,
Gordon, and
gotcha,
I just think
on.
they're, yeah, that's coming too. And I just feel like they're really doing some kind of inventive things to pay 'em, pay their respects to these series and then bringing out new things with them. I mean, Jeremy, when it's all said and done, you do this run. What do you think? Do you hope is like the lasting impression that you've left on the world of Flash Gordon?
Man, that's tough. I mean, one of my joys in anything I do, whether it's DC or Marvel, is I like to add toys to the toy box. I think, though, you know, adding to the Flash Gordon universe is always going to be great. But at the same time, if I can get people familiarized with this kind of like old school action hero, and that they leave, you know, wanting more, or have a good feeling about it, I've done my job, you know, because
Right.
it really is reintroducing somebody that most people don't know about. You know, it'd be like me doing the Lone Ranger or something. You know, it's like, oh, they sort of know, but they don't know. And it's a bit of an uphill battle. I think the way that um I think about it though is this is my chance to channel all my love of pulp sci-fi into something that that somebody can just be entertained in a way. It's not only that it's entertaining, it's like anybody could read this. It's sort of like when I was reading X-Men growing up, it was like anybody could read this. It's not going to be so violent that you're like, oh, take this away. It's not going to be so sexual that you're like, oh my gosh, you're in trouble. It's something that like the idea that some kid could pick it up and be inspired about something, that was always the thing. Like when I was growing up, I saw Star Wars, you know, between when I was growing up, there were no internet, you know, it was all like between movies, you just guessed, you imagined, you just tried to play. And the idea that somebody might read a Flash Gordon book and get like spark something that makes them want to read more or pretend or imagine, that to me is the goal, you know?
Yeah. How about you, Will? In terms of, is there anything you wanted Jeremy to do to put in, like, to design your own characters? I mean, do you have that kind, or spaceship or alien race? Is there anything that you've had in terms of all the different characters you've worked on that you still kind of want to do to add to some universe?
We are always talking about it. Jeremy said always that, how is there anything else you want to draw? Let's
Yeah.
draw this. Let's draw that, and I'm having a lot of fun. Whenever I feel like doing something, I can send. I know that I can send Jeremy a note. Say, hey, what about we doing this
Yeah.
or doing that, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, the way that we are working on Flash Gordon to me is very rewarding because I'm seeing this world, taking shape again, and as I said, and as Jeremy said, I keep trying to honor what was done before, but at the same time imprinting some new stuff on it. For example, all the technology that I'm trying to draw, I keep always holding myself and trying to let's do something technological the way they saw it in the 30s.
Oh, that's cool.
Great. Yeah.
I love that.
Not something that is really technological for us.
Yeah.
But something, in between. You look at the stuff and you say, this has some kind of, vintage look into it, something like that. And it's a lot of fun. And it's not so easy, but it's fun. And building on what Jeremy just said, for me, what I would be happy is when I started doing it is and doing the pages, I kept thinking, the old fans, the people that really knew Flash Gordon. And so I keep imagining like a grandfather picking up the book for his grandson and say, "Look, this I used to read this when I was young," and seeing that it's new, and that as Jerry said, that he and his grandson can read together. So that's something that I try to keep thinking about, and always brings a smile to my face.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I love that idea of being able to have that generational connection with a property like this. And that's not the easiest row to hoe to have it appeal to, older fans and bring in a new audience. I mean, but it's a noble goal to get people reading. And I mean, I think that's kind of like the enduring appeal of a character like Flash Gordon. There's always room for that type of like pulp hero, for a good action story, a good adventure story. Um, I love when those, come along, and I'm very excited to see where Flash Gordon goes. I just want to talk a little bit about the rest of the creative team. I think it's being colored by Lee Lowridge and Taylor Esposito's lettering. So no slouches either of them in terms of filling out the rest of the creative team from Man Cave. I mean, the colors in the book look fantastic.
It really did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, to complement your artwork, Will, the look of Ming in terms of, his outfit and features, I just think really fit in, give it a different look. Yeah, just really well done by everybody.
Yeah, well, I'm very happy with the visuals on the book. Really, really happy. We had another colorist earlier that was starting it. He was very good, but I don't think that his style fit very well with the book, and so they changed. And I couldn't be happier. I mean, it's very, very good, and I think the pages came out amazing.
Oh, thank goodness for you. Because like I said, it all looks impossible to me. And I'm always like, this looks great. And people are like, no. And I'm like, okay, whatever you say, Will, you do it. I'm so glad you're the director and the DP. Like like you've got a vision for that stuff. And I'm so grateful. Like it doesn't work unless it all works together,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's always like I'm always trying. I mean, obviously, I respect all professionals, and it's not that, for example, if you put somebody to color or make the letter, uh, and you don't like, it's not that
Right.
he's not good. Maybe it's just the fact that he's not right for that kind of book.
Right.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and when I saw the first pages in colors, I said, that doesn't work. That's not the vision that I would give to that book. It's not that it's not good. It doesn't match. So I came in and I said, okay, guys, this I mean the colors are not bad, but this doesn't work. This and I really don't like the way the colors are matching the lines. For that book, I don't think it works. And then Jeremy came in. I agree. I agree. I said, oh, I thought it was just me. But
I will.
and the editor said that they were not happy too. So
Mm.
and then they brought in the other colors, and it was amazing. When I saw the first page in color, I said, "That's it.
Right.
That's it."
And it's just going to get better and better as that stuff gets streamlined, And I know that the issue 0 is going to be available for everybody digitally soon. So that'll be definitely, it's maybe in the next week. Hopefully it'll be out so everybody can just read it and catch up and get excited about the series. Because it's critical. It's almost critical to read that before you read 1.
When I read the script for issue 0,
yeah,
I was wow. Man.
It was fun. I mean, the fun stuff too is like what you're saying about the technology is about giving it these almost like quaint names. Like when I call it the Unraveler, it's just like, yeah, that sounds super cheesy, but then you see what it does, right? And that was always those old movies and those old serials. You're like, the Death Ray of Doom, and you're like, okay, I get it, you know. But bringing that to life in a way that you're like, you're not necessarily. It's like it's charming, but it still has stakes, you know.
Oh yeah,
and
I
honestly, think the end of 0, I don't think anybody saw coming. So
exactly, that's why I hope everybody can read number 0 before they read 1.
Yeah, I encourage listeners, go and get it. Get ready for issue 1. But I think there's an art to that type of like, I mean, it was popular in the 30s, but also in the Silver Age science fiction comics. There's an art to that techno babble where it almost, but not quite, does sound like something that exists. You know, like you just can't throw anything out there. So I appreciated the Unraveler.
It's sort of like in that Avatar movie where they're like, it's called Unobtainium or whatever, and you're like, yeah, okay, you know, it's like.
For the two of you, like, not, you know, you've worked on many different comic books over the years, but do you have different influences depending on the project you're working on? You know, we talked a little bit about looking back at some of the other Flash Gordon stuff, but is there stuff that, you know, either artists or writers that you're like, you know, that you get inspiration from when you go into a new project?
Oh gosh, I mean, everything for me. I mean, I grew up with comic books, so you know, Frank Miller's stuff is always top of mind, like the Mazzucchelli like Born Again series and the Daredevil stuff, and the Batman Year One was always huge for me. And then obviously I was a product, like, you know, the 90s image revolution hit me right in the right time, you know, and that really affected me. But growing up, I realized that, and I never noticed who wrote it or drew it. I was just reading comic books. And in retroactively, I realized that Mark Grunwald was a huge impact on me. Grunwald was huge. Chuck Dixon was huge. Scott McDaniel, you know, the guys from the JLI, Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatteis and Kevin McGuire were really big for me too. But when I go into a project, I often think, I don't know if Will's like this, like I'll look at old pulp things and you know, I can't tell you how many times like Frazetta did a cover for like John Carter of Mars or something, and that sparked 1,000 ideas. And there's also a guy called Larry Elmore that was like, I was really into fantasy, and he would do these covers, and just those book covers would get me really excited about ideas. So paperback covers were always like super rad to me. You know, the promise of what was inside was amazing.
Oh, that's awesome. How about you, Will?
Oh yeah, I mean, depending on the project, sometimes it's a character that I already worked on, or I saw some stuff done in the past. I always try to go back and see what was done and see what I could take and you know, make it my own without, you know, I don't like to copy anybody, but I always like to drink on what other artists did. Or, for example, if I'm doing a story that is, you know, more dark and it needs more shadow, so I go to an artist that I know that can do it well and see how he handles some of the stuff and see what I can take and learn from that. So it's basically that. Especially when you get a character that was drawn a long time ago. So I like to go there and see what was done, what was not done, and I look at it and say, yeah, that this guy could have done this. So that's what I'm gonna try to do. So I always look into what was done and who did it, and artists that are doing something similar to what I'm trying to achieve. So that's how I approach it. But I am very, very careful not to go into the same direction, because influence is good, but it's only good if you don't let it take away your freedom to create.
Yeah, wow. That makes a lot of sense, Will.
It's awesome.
It's funny, Jeremy, you mentioned Frank Frazetta, who I think worked on Flash Gordon from like in the early 50s, but I've seen some Frazetta Flash Gordon pinups, which are like
I mean, I think
phenomenal.
the first Frazetta thing I ever saw, I think the first thing probably any of us ever saw was a Conan thing.
Yeah.
And then he had done a bunch of John Carter Mars, and then it's so evocative, and there's so much cool movement, and it was like this weird place between like, I could see this in a museum, but it's also fantasy, so I won't see it in a museum, and
Yeah.
I love that. There's a lot of artists, whether it's comic book artists or sci-fi fantasy artists, that like they get a short shrift. They don't. We all get put into boxes in the creative field. It's really weird, but I'm sure Will experiences this too. It's like, oh, you're a superhero artist. That's all you can do, and it's like, no, I can do so much more. I get it. Like I write animation. It's like, oh, you can't write live action. Then even when you do live action, you're like, well, you can't write comic books. It's like, I can write, So it's weird. It's weird. But I think about that with Frazetta and some of those guys. Like they're considered high art now. Like if you had an original Frazetta, holy moly, you'd be rolling.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that always amazed me. I remember once I loved a guy called Norman Rockwell.
Yeah.
I always loved his work. And I remember once I was in the university, and they asked us, the teacher said, okay, you can bring some work from artists that you admire. And I have a big book from Norman Rockwell. And I brought that. And when I got to the teacher, and he looked at it, those Saturday posts.
Yeah.
And
sure.
This is not art. I said, what? This is commercial job. It is not art. Said, really? So you mean that the Sistine Chapel is not art?
Right.
Because that's a commercial job?
Right. Right.
Are you insane?
Yeah.
All of those paintings that were done in the past, that they portrait, that's not art at all.
Yeah.
Because
that's crazy.
It was commissioned by somebody.
That's crazy. It's crazy. Especially some of the Norman Rockwell that like
that's insane. I said, okay.
I'm done with you.
So what is art for you? I mean,
Yeah.
And that's the way I feel about Frazetta. I mean, you look at one of his paintings, I said, and there are some crazy people, this is not art because it's fantasy. Oh, really?
Yeah, you do it then. It's like, no, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to keep either of you too much longer. I really appreciate your time talking about Flash Gordon. Jeremy, I do want to say that out of I've done 120 of these. Well, 120 of these have come out in terms of the podcast, but I think you have one of the coolest backgrounds in terms of all of your books. And
well, it's cool.
I think I see like a 1966 Batmobile back there.
That one's from the Superpowers in the 80s. And what was fun is, I have two daughters, and we were living in an apartment for a long time, like 14 years, and we just moved. And so now I have like a small like location that I can put things. And I have like posters of some of my movies here. Check it out. So like, here's the Sienkiewicz did this great poster for this Batman movie that I had written. And it's just freaking awesome. And you've got some Super Sons and some other cool things. But I'm telling you, not having it stuffed under the bed. And I told my wife, like, just give me this little space. This is mine, please.
Just let me put some stuff on the wall.
Yeah. These are all the buttons from 1989. I wore all of those on my jacket to go see Batman. And like the first in line in my hometown theater, I had like I'm such a nerd, man.
Did they interview you for the paper?
No, they didn't. But I had this giant thirst buster, not accounting for the fact that my bladder was probably this small. And like halfway through the movie, I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like sweating. Like, oh no, I've been waiting my whole life for this movie, you know?
Yeah. Kids I mean, there's, we still have summer blockbusters, but
yeah,
I don't
know. Like that.
I tried to explain to my oldest, to Charlotte, who's 11. I tried to explain to her like exactly what it was like in 1989. Like you could not look anywhere without Batman something. It was just everywhere. It was
also,
like,
by the way, we didn't get reserved seats. It was a cattle run.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You're like,
oh yeah.
I had to get there early. I had to wait. I had to,
getting line.
Saving my brother's seat in line. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. I would be remiss if I didn't say, Jeremy, since I have you here, not just in terms of your background, but just to, my brother and I, a shout out to my brother, Bobby. He's the Cryptid Creator Corner's #1 most dedicated fan. Bobby listens to all my episodes. Bobby and I watched, one of the things we would do even after we got married and had our own kids. We still get together every Wednesday night and we watch a show together.
Yeah.
We've been doing it for over 20 years since we moved out of our parents' house. But the first show we watched together was Supernatural. And I know you were involved with that, but imagine my delight to find out that you wrote the season 13 Scooby Natural episode, which is one of my absolute favorite episodes of Supernatural. And so
it was a dream. That was a dream. Me and my buddy Jim wrote that together, and Jim and I had done tons of animation. And if you look when Dean says Scooby Dooby Doo, we're right over his shoulder.
Really?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things we did, and we kept thinking they're gonna stop us, right? Like at any point they're gonna stop us, and like we never got stopped. And there were no notes. The notes were, "This is really funny." That was it. It was such a crazy thing.
Well, it was I mean, I love the show, and Bobby and I, two brothers. They
totally.
They hunt demons, and we're like, hey, well, let's get together and let's check out this new show. That was back in 2004.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And we're like, we really liked it. We kept watching it, and I love just how meta they got. Like the longer it went on, the weirder it got. They were never afraid to do really, meta type of episodes. And I thought, Supernatural and Scooby Doo, and I really felt like the one thing I loved about that episode so much is that I really felt it could have been more. I really felt it was going to be more like sanitized. Like
right.
They're not really going to go for it. Like it'll be something.
Right.
There'll be a little thing where we're not really going to go full animated. And I felt like at no point did I feel like one of the producers stepped in and put the brakes on, and I was so happy.
Well, I mean, again, here's another comment about the wonderfulness of artists. The guy who directed the animation portion, his name is Spike Brandt, and he showed us the scene where this person was like eviscerated, and it was like something out of Hellraiser, and we kept thinking like, oh my gosh, they're not going to let us do this with the Scooby Doo, and they're like, yeah, it's great, and it's like, what do you mean it's great? It was so bananas. It was that was a life-changing experience for me, for sure.
Well, I appreciated it, and my brother appreciated it, and I just
since
you're here. Since you're here, thought I'd mention it. But yeah, I think the Zero issue was so phenomenal in terms of Flash Gordon. Did not expect where it was going. That final page is beautiful. And I really am excited for people to get their hands on this. So when you're hearing this episode, you'll have by the time this comes out, it'll be a few weeks. So make sure you let your local comic book shop know. July 24th, issue #1 of Flash Gordon. And do yourself a favor, make sure you read the Zero issue as soon as it's available. I'll put links to Mad Cave's website in the show notes. But yeah, I really loved it. So Jeremy, Will, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm a big fan, and I really, really appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
It was my pleasure too.
All right, well, listeners, July 24th, first issue of Flash Gordon. It's Mad Cave's 10th anniversary year, and they are really putting out some. That's right. They're putting out some fantastic comic books. So thank you for listening. If you pick up Flash Gordon, please find me on Twitter. Let me know that you liked it. Let's talk about it. And thanks for listening. I'll see you next time. Good night.
Good night,
everybody.
This is Byron O'Neill, one of your hosts of the Cryptid Creator Corner, brought to you by Comic Book Yeti. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of our podcast. Please rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. It lets us know how we're doing, and more importantly, how we can improve. Thanks for listening.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Cryptid Creator Corner, maybe you would enjoy our sister podcast, Into the Comics Cave. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.